want to do. You can help me film. A few years ago, I quit flying for holidays. And since then, my relationship with travel has completely transformed. My name's Sarah, and I'm going to tell you firstly why I quit hopping on planes for leisure, and then I'll share what I've learned since and how it's enhanced the way I travel now. So the reason I decided to give up flying is essentially because I could no longer ignore how bad it is for the climate and therefore for us. I couldn't justify getting on a plane anymore once I found out that it's literally the only way to emit tons of harmful greenhouse gas emissions within just a few hours. And the more I learned about it, the more convinced I became. We need to take urgent action on the climate crisis. And flying is the fastest growing cause of greenhouse gas emissions globally. And these are largely leisure flights. Business flights were pretty much plateauing even before Zoom took over the world. And most of these flights are being taken by a relatively small number of people. In the UK, for example, 70% of the flights are taken by just 15% of people. And almost half of people in the UK don't even step foot on a plane in any given year. And it's the same picture around the world. Most of these frequent flyers are at the higher end of the income spectrum. So if you fly at least once, twice, 3 times a year, then flying less is one of the most impactful things you can do to take action against the climate crisis. To help you visualize how flying compares to train travel, a single return flight to Berlin clocks up about the same amount of carbon as 13 return trips by train. And for the majority of journeys in Europe, traveling by train rather than plane cuts emissions by around 80 to 95%. And offsetting isn't the answer. If you don't know what offsetting is, it's basically the idea that emissions released from a flight can be counterbalanced by planting trees or paying for other climate positive projects. Even if these projects actually do work, or if the trees don't burn down, neither of which are guaranteed, time is against us here. Trees take decades to grow, and during that time, the emissions from that flight are up there warming the planet right now and causing irreversible damage to our planet. I will be doing a separate video about carbon offsetting and go into more detail about exactly why I'm not a big fan of it, but for now, since giving up flying, there's a few things I've discovered which have completely changed the way I think about travel. So I think there's this common misconception, which I used to have, that flying is always quicker than getting the train or ferry. And granted, that is the case for a lot of destinations, but it really depends on where you live and where you're going. If you live in London, for example, it's faster to get the Eurostar to Paris or Amsterdam than it is to fly, because you don't have to travel to and from different airports. Another assumption I had was that it's always way cheaper to fly, which sort of makes sense because we're constantly bombarded with adverts for ridiculously cheap flights. But when you actually get to the end of the process of buying your flight, it's almost always more expensive once you've added luggage, your seat reservation, and transport arrangements to and from different airports. My rail and sail journey to Ireland, for example, was cheaper than my friends' flights for the same time period. So when I first started switching trains for planes, I remember I was pretty put off when the journey was significantly longer than flying. I got the train to Berlin once, and I remember when I booked it, the 10-hour train journey really didn't appeal to me. But once I was actually on the train, I loved it. I really appreciated having a whole day to myself where I could just read, watch a show, or just stare out the window. It gave me time to relax and space for reflection. The view from trains doesn't share the same monotony that planes offer. Usually, when I watch the landscape change from the window of a train, so too do my thoughts. And I find myself able to move along old, stagnant, or unhelpful thoughts and have new ideas. So although it's not always cheaper to fly, unfortunately at the moment a lot of the time it is. I'll be doing another video in the future exploring why that is, but when I have paid more for train journeys, I've sort of justified it because of the added benefits that you get compared to when you fly. And one of those benefits is the opportunity to stop over in different places along the way. I've had trips where I've got to stop over in Paris for dinner or have lunch in Barcelona before carrying on to another country and continuing my holiday. And the actual experience of being on a train compared to a plane is just a lot more comfortable. You have access to your luggage, you can get up and use the bathroom whenever. You usually have access to a cafe, bar, or restaurant carriage. Often there's Wi-Fi so you can catch up on some work or watch a show on Netflix. If the train isn't busy, you can always get up and change seats if your neighbour isn't your ideal travel companion. Somehow that doesn't seem as likely on a plane. You usually travel from one city centre to another, so no need for long, pricey coach or taxi transfers. Once you arrive, there's no standing around waiting for your luggage or long passport queues. And all of those mean sometimes it's easier to travel with children when you don't fly. And it's usually more pet and bike friendly too. Okay, so this needed its own point because honestly, I think that sleeper trains are one of the best inventions of all time. The experience of going to sleep in one city, maybe even another country, and waking up in another is exceptional. I've had breakfast in bed once with one of my closest friends as we watched the Spanish countryside whiz past us. It's such an adventure, and I think it immediately elevates any holiday if you get the opportunity to go on one. If you fly, more often than not, you're gonna have to trek to and from different sterile airports because they're usually miles away from your home and where you're staying. And then you experience the stress of airport security and worrying about if any of your liquids are over 100 milliliters. If you avoid flying, you avoid the airport, which in my experience has always been a bonus. So to sum it up, I basically realized through all the different journeys I've made on trains or ferries that traveling by land or sea is superior to traveling by plane. It's a better experience for me, and more importantly, it's far less damaging to the planet. And that's why I've decided to share my journeys on YouTube, to show the reality of switching planes for trains, and hopefully inspire more people to travel this way. So as well as doing more videos like this where I talk about the ideas and issues surrounding sustainable travel, I'm also going to be uploading essentially travel vlogs so I can take you along different journeys around the world. So if you like the sound of that, you can subscribe below, and if you found this video helpful, you can give it a like, and if you've got any questions or comments, you can leave it in the comment section below and I'll get back to you. For now though, thanks so much for watching if you made it this far, and I'll see you soon.